Good evening, students. My name is Aurora Ascension. I'm the ESL professor for Polytechnic University, and for some of you, I am your tutor, English tutor also. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to share a PowerPoint that I have done, and my PowerPoint has to do with the methods and steps to writing an engineering technical report. Okay, so to start off with, like I said, this is my name. I totally love to research, compare, and analyze new concepts. And I want to make this simple for you and make you conscious of the reader-based approach to your capstones, research reports, term papers, or any writing whatsoever. Sometimes we're writing and we think that what we're writing is obvious to everyone, and it's not. These are the 4 steps that you need to have success for your paper. First of all, we're going to review grammar and some points of English and maybe compare a little bit with Spanish so you can get an idea how to set yourself up for writing. The second part is essay writing, and this is my favorite because I tell my students, organize yourself. As long as you organize yourself, you're fine. All you have to do is have an introduction, have a body, have a conclusion, and I'll teach you a 1, 2, 3 method to organizing yourself where you can write an essay in half an hour. Number 3 is APA writing. APA is the American Psychological Association, and what they do is they have a form of writing. They have certain rules that if you are writing, it makes it that the reader can understand what you're writing a bit better and could read it easier. It could flow easier. And the fourth will be research writing per se, where we're going to talk about quantitative and qualitative research methods and how to write your paper and how to set up your capstone research paper for success. Okay, number 1, set up for success. We're going to talk grammar, and grammar is not a bad word. Use the form of the verb to be correctly. The verb to be in Spanish is ser y estar. Easy. Ser y estar is yo soy maestra. Okay. Yo estoy en mi casa. Perfect. 2 different verbs in Spanish. In English, it's the same verb. I am a professor. I am at home. See how easy that is? It's easier than Spanish. We have to know your irregular verbs. Those, I'm so sorry, you have to look at the list, memorize it. I'm going to give you quick rules for the past, present, and future tenses so you can understand when to apply them. The fanboys, which is how to connect your sentences together and make complex sentences. And we're going to talk a little bit about punctuation, the active versus the passive voice. Parallelism is how to balance your writing. Fragment and run-on sentences, this is something very big and a problem with most writers, and you have to be very careful. Subject-verb agreement, we're going to review that a bit so you can see it. So all of this is probably maybe two English classes, 2 8-week English classes, so I'm going to do this as quickly and as efficiently as I can. Now, use the form of the verb to be correctly. Here in the present, you have I am. The pronoun I is always going to be married with am. I am a professor. I am at home. Estar y ser. You are. Okay, you are a student. You are watching my video. He, she, it is. Now, if you notice, I tell my students, use this as a guideline. He, she, it, to me, is the one that controls mostly the English language. So as long as you control that he, she, it, and memorize certain things about that, oh my gosh, it's so much easier. Because all you have to do is remember that he, she, it has certain ways of dealing. Like for instance, he, she, it is in present tense. You, we, they are. Okay, that's present tense. Now, I was, but you were, and here, he, she, it is was. A lot of times you hear on the radio, we was. You hear that all the time, we was, and that's incorrect. You can't do that. We were, they were. That's the way that you conjugate that. You can't say we was, because were, think of it as plural, and are, think of it as plural. Now, in the English language, you can be manifested as singular or plural. So in these cases, in present and past, you is always married with the you, we, they, okay? Because sometimes it may be singular, you were happy. And I can say, if I'm referring to my class, you have a lot of homework tonight, okay? Now, I want, this here is a link that will bring you to the irregular verbs. And here we have a list of irregular verbs, okay? You have the base form of the verb. Notice that I mentioned the verb to be, ser y estar, and this is what we were talking about. Now, this is past tense, this is the irregular verb. I'm going to get one that's relatively easy and easy to explain, this list, and that we can associate it with Spanish so you can get the idea. Okay. I write every day. Write, I'm using it in present tense because I'm referring to something that happens every day. If I say I wrote a letter, past tense, yo escribí una carta. Aquí yo escribo todos los días. Yo escribí una carta. To use the third category here, written, you have to have, has, had, or the form of the verb to be before the word written. The poem was written. Was is the form of the verb to be, written by Shakespeare. So this third category that is called past participle, what I want you to do is, for the time being, if you're still learning English and you're in the starting stages of learning English, don't worry about it. But remember, this third category, to use these words, you must have the form of the verb to be before it. Usually it's have, has, had, but in this case it could, like I mentioned before, it could change. This is the past tense. Oh, this is the present tense, this is the past tense, and this is the past participle. Okay, these are the irregular verbs, and unfortunately I'm showing you this list because it's just a matter of memorization. You have to memorize them. Here we have what's called a mind map. A mind map is excellent because if you're going to write an essay, the mind map is going to help you so much. If you're going to write a research paper, this can help you also organize your ideas. It may look weird, it may look a little bit strange, but it's so much easier to understand where each idea comes from. I can show you that list and you can read it and you can go through it and you are going to look at me and say, well, it's so hard to memorize. Well, no, it's not. Look at this. Group number 1 is one word. Okay, here you have cost, cut, hit, hurt, let, put, shut. These words coincidentally in past, present, future, in past participle, they don't change. So this verb is so much easier. Just remember the ones that don't change. You could also make a Google search for verbs that don't change in the past and present, and you'll find many more. So these are basically, I cut myself last night. Okay. cut the onions for dinner. He has cut the mango tree. He has cut down the mango tree. Okay, so this is an idea. Here you have verbs that end with en. So look how easy it is to remember this, because they all end with en. So the present tense is speak. The past tense is spoke. Then you have spoken. The jury has spoken. Now, what's the difference? And there I can tell you that it's like in Spanish. Habla con el profesor. Habla, speak. Él habló, past tense, con el profesor, spoke. Él ha hablado con el profesor. He has spoken to the professor. See the difference? Maybe the past participle is a little bit more formal. Maybe it's a bit more educated, which I would love for you guys to learn. But for the time being, present and past irregular verbs are fine. Once you feel that you've increased your knowledge of English, remember the past participle. Steal, stole, stolen. I'm going to steal that pencil. He stole my pencil. He has stolen my pencil. Él ha robado. Okay? I'm going to steal that pencil. Me voy a robar ese lápiz. Me robé y me he robado. See the difference? So here, these verbs, coincidentally enough, end with en. Notice like the word eat in the past is ate. Then you have eaten in the past participle. Some of them change like very drastically, and some of them don't change that much. But this is just a guide for you to help you memorize. The group number 3, you have the words that end with wn. Blown, grown, known, thrown, flown. See, this helps you remember them. Here you have verbs that the vowels change. Sing me a song. Cántame una canción. He sang a song. Él cantó una canción. He has sung at the event. Él ha cantado en el evento. See what happens? So this here is just that a verb might change. IAU is usually the change to these words. Here you have words with GHT. So all you have to do is remember these words. Think, thought, fight, fought, teach, taught. Many of my students, even professionals, I just had somebody very professional. He's a general manager of a big corporate company. And he said, you teached it. No, you taught me. See, when you buy something, it's present, but I bought. Okay. And here you have words that end with D. And then you have words that may end with T. So just take a look at this. You're going to get this PowerPoint. So take a look at this, and this way you can actually try to remember. And like I said, this mind map that I'm showing you, excellent for you to organize your writing. You could do the same thing. Remember your main topic. Out of your main topic, you have 3 subtopics. And from your 3 subtopics, you can just branch out. Okay? Now, the past tense. The past tense is easy, believe it or not. The worst tense for me is the present tense, because sometimes you're trying to make the present tense pass, and it just doesn't happen. The past tense is an event that finished last night, yesterday, the day before, last month, last year, this morning, an event that has finished. And you can have either the word with ed at the end, or you can have an irregular verb. Okay, now I'm going to probably prepare another PowerPoint for you guys on pronunciation, because there are differences in how you pronounce the word when it has ed at the end. So that I'm going to probably give you another PowerPoint on, but it's just very basic. Don't worry about that. Here at the present tense, when the action is now, it's present tense. When you're giving a command, sign your name, the action is now. When the action occurs frequently, wait a minute. When the action occurs frequently, you usually say, usually, usualmente, frecuentemente, ocasionalmente, often. Okay, so you're using words like often, sometimes, frequently. So it's an action that could be done today, it could be done tomorrow. It's an action that you just do frequently. When asking a question, you might say, do you want do you want dinner? Want is in the present tense. In the past tense, he wanted dinner last night. Okay, past tense. But no, in the present tense, when you're asking a question, um, are you going? Here you have the ing, because you're saying, are you going to school? So but go is in the present tense. Okay, when you're using modals, modals are may, might, could, should. So when you're using modals, you usually have the modals with the verbs. Like, for instance, you may write your name on that paper. He might drive to Sarasota with us. Okay? So when you're using a modal, okay, you're using the present tense. When you have an indefinite outcome, in other words, you're saying in the future, I will write a term paper. It's in the future. I will write a term paper. So it's an indefinite outcome. It's something, or I may cook dinner tonight. You don't say I might cook dinner tonight. No, I might cook dinner tonight, present tense. Imperative, like I mentioned before, when you're giving somebody a command. Write your name, do your homework. It's you're giving a command. When using the negative, do not. If you're using the negative, I do not drive, then you have to use the present tense. You're using the word in the present tense, drive. I do not leave early in the morning. Okay? The future tense, it's easy. It's the noun plus will. I will, or Mary will, John will, you will. Okay? Or it's the noun and going to. He would be going to. He will be going to finish his degree. Okay? You can say if and would, a conditional. So if you do your homework, do it in the present tense, you would get good grades. Get in the present tense. Say, because I'm using the future. So here the verb goes in the present tense because I'm using the future. That's conditional. Okay, that's a little bit more complicated in the future. But here, just remember, if you want to keep it simple, noun plus will, noun plus going to, and here it's if you have a condition. For instance, si me pegaran la lotería, yo fuera rico. This is si y fuera. Okay? If I would play the lottery, I would be rich. Okay. The Coordinated conjunctions are the fanboys. For, nor, or, so, and, but, yet. 85% of the time, these have a comma before them. Remember that. For that matter, if you are saying you're writing a sentence and you're using that, that does not have a comma before it. However, the word which has a comma before it, so you have to have a comma before which. Punctuation. It's very important. At this stage of the game, you're in college, you have to know that you have to capitalize each sentence and end with a period. Okay? Now, if you have a question, you put a question mark, but you don't put a question mark period, you put a question mark. Then you can have quotation marks if you are using someone else's exact words, or if you took something directly from the internet, you must use quotation marks. This is very important in APA writing, but it has to be the person's or the article's exact words, and you must have a citation. You have to say, according to Dr. Smith, quotation, the world is ending soon, period. Inside the quotation mark, quotations. Okay, close quotation. Apostrophes. Apostrophe is used to show contractions. So in other words, do not is don't. A few of you have problems with the apostrophes because, or the contractions rather, because we don't, I'm, and you're like, I'm, hasta, it's, hasta se le hace difícil decirlo. So it's I've is I have. But you have to get your ear, make your ear, sharpen your ear to these contractions and know what these contractions are. If you need to just say, I am, I have, do it. I will instead of I'll. It's hard for you to pronounce. It's hard. That's fine. Use, and in APA writing, another secret, you cannot use contractions. Right now I said you cannot. If I were to say you can't use contractions. See, can't is a contraction. Okay, or to indicate possessive. If you have a possessive that is like the boy's toy, you only have one boy, so you have BOY apostrophe S. If you had two boys, you say the boy's toy, also it's pronounced the same way, but there's a difference. The apostrophe goes behind the S because the word boys is already in plural. So if you have a word in plural, you must have the apostrophe after the S. Or if you have a name that ends with S, like Jesus' robe, the robe belongs to Jesus. So you have to have the apostrophe after the S because his name ends with an S. Apostrophes is so easy to use, and or you have also another way you can use an apostrophe. Mary's been to school. Mary has been to school. But when I say Mary's been to school, it's Mary apostrophe S been to school. So pay attention to that because you can have that like a name, and you can have apostrophe S that could mean Mary has, Mary is. Okay? Comma. There are about basic 6 rules to a comma. These are more or less the same, the basic ones. Use a comma to separate the items in a series. Use the comma to separate opposites or before the conjunctions, like for, and, but, nor, or, but, yet, which I mentioned before. That's when you use a comma. Use a comma before which. Use a comma between city and state. Use a comma before you're saying April 21st, comma, 2021. Okay, see where I put the comma? After the day. Hyphen are used to give words like a signal, one word only. Like you have an ongoing process. On hyphen going. When I'm going to teach you writing, I'll go through the fact that hyphens are something that most of the time spell check and grammar picks that up easily. You don't have to worry about it. It's just when you're using two words as a single adjective before a noun, that's when you use a hyphen. And between a number words, like when you have 21, you have 20 hyphen 1. And to divide words into syllables, don't do that, because nowadays with APA, they do not like you to divide words into syllable. APA wants you to end the right side of your paper jagged. Okay, jagged would mean that you do not justify. Many of you go into APA, into your Word document, and have it nice and squared off and justified. No, APA doesn't have it like that. The left side, the left margin is justified, it goes straight down, but the right margin will have different sizes, and you do not use a hyphen to divide words. Okay, the exclamation points is to show strong emotions or to give a command. If I say, look out, of course, I'll have a exclamation mark. A colon introduces a list, or it's part of a final clause in a sentence. The faucet dripped, colon. It had a faulty gasket. Okay, it's the same sentence. I'm using a colon because the next part of the sentence is associated with the first part. Okay. Parentheses. Parentheses are not really used that often in APA writing, but you can use them. Sometimes you have to use parentheses, definitely, for your citations. You can use parentheses to segregate importance or information that's not that important. Parenthetical information, not important. Maybe you want to put a year in between a part of the sentence and you use a parenthesis, but try not to use them that often unless it's from what I'm telling you. A semicolon divides two independent clauses that are not connected with a conjunction. Okay, here you can say the dog bit Mary, semicolon. However, comma, she did not get sick. Okay. I'm using two separate sentences and uniting them together. I could say the dog bit Mary, period. Mary did not get sick, or she did not get sick. I could say that, but I'm using a semicolon to unite two separate sentences. You cannot use a semicolon in front of a fanboy, in front of but, and, so, yet, for, nor. Okay, you can't use a semicolon. Because if you have one of those words, you already have a union of two sentences. So this semicolon, this punctuation, is uniting two independent sentences, and so is the word and. Or like I did before, I separated both sentences and I made them two different sentences. But in academic writing, we want to see complex and compounded sentences, okay? The active voice, I gave you an example here with the active voice and the passive voice. Just remember, in Spanish, we use a lot of passive voice. We're very polite and we don't want to point fingers at anyone and say it's your fault or you did this wrong. So we use a lot of the passive voice. In English, we use the active voice. So Sally drove her car off the road. The passive is the car was driven off the road by Sally. Who did the driving? Sally. And what did she do? She drove. And what did she drive? Her car. See, this is the idea. Going having your sentences active. Sometimes when you go into spell check and grammar, it'll tell you you're using the passive, and you got to be careful. The car was driven off the road by Sally. The doer of the action is towards the end of the sentence. No, it takes away the power of the sentence. Here you know that you have passive because you have was and you're using by towards the end of the sentence. The dog bit Timmy on the arm. Timmy was bitten on the arm by the dog. See the difference? Now, I'm telling you to use the active voice, but there are times that the passive voice is acceptable. Like, for instance, when you have, when you don't know who did the action. So if you don't know who did the action, you may want to go passive, or you don't want to accuse anyone. For instance, if you're writing a letter to a customer, you don't say, you forgot to put in the purchase order number, because it's you forgot. You know, it's accusing the person. So you want to say, the purchase order was not written on the order form. Was not. See? Was. You're using the was. So, but who didn't write it? I mean, you know, somebody had to have done it, and it had to have been you since you're making the order. But you don't want to say you because you don't want to accuse your customer. Here you have the Purdue Owl. I'm going to tell you that this is one of the best things you can use. The Purdue Owl gives you a lot of examples, and it's one of the best websites there is for English as a second language. Here you have the brakes were slammed on by her. She slammed on the brakes. See? Doer action, doer action. Your bicycle has been damaged. You don't know who did it. But if you say, I damaged your bicycle, okay. See, here's a case that you don't want to say who did the damaging. Your bicycle was damaged. Oh my gosh, my bicycle was damaged. But who did it? I damaged it. Ooh. Okay, here you have parallelism. Now, this is a stylistic arrangement where you have similar patterns in the sentences. For instance, I'm going to tell you that if you have a sentence that is in the past tense, he broke the glass, then picked up, past tense, broke and picked up, past tense, the pieces, and throw them in the garbage. No, he threw them in the garbage. Past tense. You have to keep the past tense together, okay? So here you have a few examples. Good driving is as much as a matter of courtesy as skill. Good driving is as much of a matter of courtesy as it is a matter of skill. So it's a little bit more complicated here because you have to match up the as. Here you have the land to the north of us is owned by Double M Ranch, and my uncle owns the land to the north of us. Yeah, you might say it's a perfectly good sentence, but I'll look at it and say, no, it's not balanced. Because the land to the west of us is owned by the Double M Ranch, and the land to the north is owned by my uncle. See how this gives it more power, more emphasis? So when you're writing, be careful that your tenses are matching up, and be careful about how you word. because the first part of the sentence should be worded that it matches up with the second part of the sentence. Okay, let me go down to 6. The bacon was here. The bacon was fatty. Grease was on the potatoes, and the eggs were cold. So you have the last two kind of like passive. Let me see. The bacon was fatty. Okay, the potatoes greasy, and the eggs cold. Okay, so that's more balanced. That's parallelism. Fragmented. Here you have a few, which was built in 1950. Okay, when you have a sentence that starts with before, after, which, anything that shows you since, because, be careful. As soon as I start reading those sentences, I know that 85% of the time my students are going to have a fragmented sentence, because which was built in 1950. Well, you're going to tell me, well, the sentence before it explained about the house. No, you have to say, you have to include that as part of the prior sentence to make sense. So you have comma, which was built in the house was is located on Elm Street. Now that doesn't make sense, but anyway, the building crumbled, which was built in 1950. Okay. Needed the materials for the science project. Who needed it? I needed it. You needed it. We needed it. Bertha gave me a computer game for my birthday last week. Well, Bertha, noun, gave, verb, you're fine. Talking on the phone for a couple of hours last night. That's introductory material, comma, I forgot to do my homework, complete sentence. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to make sure that you have complete sentences, okay? And again, spell check and grammar is my buddy. Subject verb agreement. Your subject and your verb must agree in number. Here with he, she, it, you always use the word goes, because he, she, it in English, the verb has to have es or s at the end, okay? In this case, he goes to work by bus, but they visit us every other week. You can say he visits with an S, us, every other week. See the difference? They go to work by bus. Okay. See what the difference is? He, she, it. The verb has to end with S or ES. Okay? The phrases with as well as together with along are not part of the subject. Like, let's see, the politician along with the newsman. Okay, here you can actually scratch this whole area out. The politician is expected shortly. So it's not the newsman. You can say the newsmen, scratch all this out, the newsmen are expected shortly. See the difference? When you have two subjects united by and, your subjects is plural. John and Joan are quite different. You can say Joan is quite different. But here, since you have plural, you have to use are. Bacon and eggs is my favorite dish. Okay. Now, collective nouns. You have collective nouns would be like the audience, the team, the class. They're looked at as if they were singular. For example, the class does their homework. DOES. He does his homework. Okay. But they do their homework. Do without the ES. See how the difference goes? Okay, now we're down to part 2, so I'm going to finish this and this PowerPoint here and record a new PowerPoint. So what I'm going to do is do this by parts so this won't overwhelm you and you can learn a little bit, bit by bit, okay? So I'll see you in a little while.